Hey, let's go over the Preston Castle Story. You guys ready? My name is Jen, and I went over there to take some pictures, really connected with the castle, and I want to tell you all about it. Okay, so in 1890, the 230-acre parcel of land where the Preston Castle stands was purchased from the Ione Coal and Iron Company for $30 per acre, with 100 acres donated. The land was purchased to house the Preston School of Industry, established by the state legislature as a progressive action towards rehabilitation rather than simply imprisoning juvenile offenders. Construction of the main administration building for the Preston School of Industry started right away. The bricks for the building were made at San Quentin and Folsom prisons using sandstone that was quarried 6 miles from Ione. The bricks were then delivered by rail at 6,000 bricks per car. The cornerstone was laid on December 23, 1890, with 2,500 people in attendance. So they just got these prisoners to make it. Okay. The plans for the school were ambitious, with the original plans showing 77 rooms on 5 floors. Oh, just had to check the plumbing. And this is where I parked. These are some old barns. And that's an old tractor. And these are kind of their garages. And there's an old trailer. Okay. The administrative building, which eventually came to be called the Preston Castle, would be the most significant example of Romanesque revival architecture in the Motherlode. The first floor would house a reception and director's room, general office with a walk-in vault, reception room, sitting room, a butler's pantry, a dining room, employee bathroom, physician's office, pharmacy, clerk's office, plus 3 additional offices. The first floor annex would include a dining room. The second floor would include a reading room, library, 12 apartments, a school room, coat and hat room, men's water closet, and women's lavatory. The second floor annex would hold a dormitory, a locker room, and a linen room. A mezzanine level was to provide 2 bathrooms and 3 bathtubs. The third and fourth floors would remain unfinished. The third floor would contain 12 rooms, and the fourth floor was designed to have 6 rooms. The basement would include a playroom, water closet, long urinal, and 9 toilets, laundry, lavatory with foot bath, shower room, and plunge bath, hall, kitchen, pantry, furnace room, fuel storage room, and a water closet with 2 toilets. The basement annex would hold a bakery, fuel storage room, kitchen, pantry, storeroom, and the employees' laundry and lavatory. Okay, the plunge bath was like when lice broke out or something, they would just like make these boys swim in this like bath. Like it was like a pool, and they just poke them with a stick until they would go. I've watched all the YouTubes and all the stuff, and that's what they said the plunge bath was for it. I have so much to tell you. Okay. At its peak, the Preston School of Industry encompassed 1,000 acres, 750 of which were farmland. It housed 800 wards, so 800 boys, employed a staff of 200, and utilized approximately 50 buildings. This place is serious. On June 13th, 1894, the first wards, or the first kids, were accepted at the Preston School of Industry, and the school was proclaimed officially opened on July 1st, 1894. The next year, electricity was installed by way of water wheel-powered dynamo called a Pelton wheel for incandescent and arc lights. I didn't even think about lighting. This place didn't have electricity, and yeah, I want to know about the water elevator too. The Preston School of Industry remained open until 1960, when new facilities for the school were completed. The building remained vacant and faded in disrepair until September 10, 2001, when the Preston Castle Foundation received a 50-year lease for the property. Remember, 50 years, if they have a 50-year planner on this. The Preston Castle was also been named a California State Historical Landmark, number 867, and is listed on the National Registry of Historic Places, NPS 750000422. The Preston Castle Foundation received ownership of the Preston Castle and surrounding 12.91 acres on November 7th, 2014. All right. Cool. So, hold on. Let's go into things that they have done. Recent successes. They have acquired the deed of ownership from the state. They installed electrical service independent from surrounding state property. They installed water and sewer service separate from surrounding state property. They rebuilt the center section of the castle's 4th floor to help stabilize the walls. New roofs on the castle, colonial, and the visitor center. Installed new fire hydrants and water systems in front of castle. Okay, good. Okay, they did that recently. I was like, man, was that always here? That looks great. Greatly expanded castle tours. Passed a brick shear test. Proved that the castle's outside brick walls are structurally sound. Completed the strategic plan. Began working with outside expertise, including Mike Garavilla, historical preservation architect and structural engineer, to guide restoration activities. Oh, this is the tool shed that's behind the castle, and it's kind of like a root cellar. I had to go check this out. Complete core historical structures report. Do you guys know how hard it is to restore a historical building? You have to go through so many loopholes. Created vintage farm museum. Ooh, where is that? Retrieved original Pelton wheel electrical generator. Okay. Showcase vintage printing equipment. Hosted successful, well-attended events. Redesigned the website to include online donations and ticket purchases. Installed outdoor lighting and replica streetlights, and they landscaped the grounds. Okay, so after going to the castle and looking at all my wonderful videos and pictures, I binge watched 10 YouTube videos on Preston Castle and the ghost hunter videos, and there's 14 ghosts that are boys that are living in the castle, and then there's the housekeeper's ghost living in the castle, and then there's this guy also in the and they're all in the basement. So when I watched all of the YouTubes, it was these kids that are ghosts asking for help, and it's the woman that got killed in there, and then there's this guy. So now I'm just reading PrestonCastleHistory.blogspot.com/2019. And it lists 18 boys. 15 are ones that are listed as dying from illness. Okay, and 18 boys are buried in Preston Cemetery, which you can't get to because the fire department needs access to that. So, what does it say everybody died of? Adolf Antron, January 22nd, 1877 to February 20th, 1895, died of pulmonary edema. Grant Walker died of typhoid fever, ? William C. Williams, what a name, died of acute meningitis in 1897. Nicholas Hamilton died in 1898 of pulmonary tuberculosis. Frank Ward died of paralytic dementia in 1890. Woolridge Leonard Woolridge, what, these names are awesome, 1899, acute cerebral meningitis. Hugh Sims died in 1912 of tuberculosis. Roy Scoville died in 1913 of meningitis. So it's like, if anything happened, like, everybody would get it in the castle. John Miller, 1913, meningitis. Joseph Ho, 1913, tuberculosis. Peter Miller, 1914, stroke of apoplexy. Benjamin Kiholi, 1915, acute nephritis, peritonitis, appendicitis rupture. James Lopez, 1990, bronchial pneumonia. And Raydell Holiday, 1922, influenza, rheumatic fever, and heart disease. The only reason we have such detailed information for the above boys listed is because of the fact they were buried on the property. Why were they buried here? Well, the school gave a certain allotment of time for the next of kin to claim the body of the deceased so they could have funeral arrangements made elsewhere. But, unfortunately, many times the boys either had no family to notify or their family was destitute, meaning they had no financial means to recover their children to bury him properly. In that case, the school had a cemetery available to bury their unclaimed dead there so they could rest in peace properly. We know there were other illnesses-related deaths at the schools over the years, but since their families came to retrieve the remains, we don't have a complete list of all of them. It also says here, according to the Preston School of Industries biennial report dated August 1st, 1896, the school's physician A.L. Adams report states that given the conditions the boys were in when committed to the school, they're not surprised the high rate of, quote, hospital inmates, unquote, as he put it. In fact, he speaks of the entire facility having been exposed to some of the worst illnesses, including incipient phthisis, today known as tuberculosis, typhoid fever, scarlet fever, epidemic influenza, tonsillitis, malaria fever, and pneumonia, as well as chronic illness such as epilepsy, chorea, and regular fractures, bruises, and abscesses, and concussions. Another thing I would like to add is even though there was an outbreak of the Spanish influenza in 1819 to 1820, and despite the fact that half of the officers working there and a third of the wards committed there were infected by the virus, none of them infected died from the illness. So now we're going to go to the unnatural deaths added around Preston Castle. When I say unnatural death, I mean the death was either a homicide, accident, suicide, or questionable. 4 of these listed are buried at the cemetery on the property. They are the deaths that I have found in my many years of researching the school. So this is the person that wrote this article. Wards. These are the kids. Grant Walker died on June 17th, 1895. Going back to Grant Walker, you will notice that he is listed as one of the boys who died from illness of typhoid fever. However, in 1896 biennial report lists 2 deaths that year, and one of the deaths was from accidental burns. intestinal ulceration. It is as if he ingested something toxic which burned his insides. Now, the only two that's listed that year were Grant Walker and Adolf Antron, and Adolf's death is listed as a biennial report matching the description of the one with pulmonary edema. So how did Grant die? Did he have typhoid fever? Did he accidentally ingest something toxic? And if so, what did he ingest? This is a mystery to which we will never have the answers to. The stories get crazier. Okay. Joseph Morgan died July 1899, shot after escaping the school. His wounds proved to be fatal. He was not killed on Preston property, but instead he died at Sheldon, which is located near Elk Grove, California. Herman Huber died October 17, 1911. At the time the staff was ringing the dinner bell, Herman and another friend, John Currain, attempted to escape the school in the dark. The night watchman, J.D. French, went after them. Although French claimed he only meant to shoot a warning shot to sound the alarm so that the superintendent would know something was happening, another ward, Ernest Reed, claimed he watched French shoot Herman in cold blood. Tama Van died in June 6, 1914. According to official reports, the boys from Company I went down to the pond to swim about 20 minutes after finishing their supper. Captain Enright told the boys that if they were not good swimmers to stay at the shallow end of the pond. Tihama claimed that he could swim dog fashion before going in headfirst. Boys who witnessed the incident said he came up for air and raised his hands and arms in a panic just before he went under and never resurfaced again. Two boys, Robert Raines and Albert Rubidux, tried to dive in after him to no avail. It wasn't until the next morning that they were able to receive his lifeless body that had sunk to the bottom of the pond. He is buried in the Preston Cemetery. There is like another weird one where some guy went into the water and he just like drowned. Frank Cardarella died in February 2nd, 1917 on Valentine's Day. Frank was found, so it says February 12th. I just said February 2nd. They're saying it's Valentine's Day. Frank was found in his cell, dangling from a pipe above. He had ripped his sleeping shirt into pieces, fashioned for himself a makeshift noose in which he used to commit suicide. He had been suffering from seizures due to epilepsy. Instead of the staff sending him to the infirmary or the hospital to be treated, they took him back to his cell and left him there. Such a sad ending for a young man who just needed someone to care for him. Sam Goines died April 19th, 1919. Whoa, what a day. After escaping the school, Sam made it all the way to Thornton Ranch, northeast of Lodi. He threatened to kill anyone who attempted to apprehend him. J.E. Kelly, who had gone after Sam, shot aiming at Sam's leg to stop him, but the same moment Sam was attempting to jump over the wire fence, he tripped. As he fell, the bullet hit him in the back, and this wound proved to be fatal. The staff brought him back to Preston, where he lived a short time. On the way up there, he admitted to the men who apprehended him that he knew he was at fault for the incident, and therefore he exonerated Kelly for being responsible for his death. Frank Algiers died on May 13, 1922. Frank arrived at Preston on May 6, 1922. He had been in a motorcycle accident just prior to being sentenced to Preston. His injuries were worse than they expected, and when he arrived at Preston, he went straight to the hospital at the school. He died a week later. Ray Baker died July 26, 1924. While in an attempt to escape, Ray Baker attacked and tried to murder guard Thomas Dooley by choking him. During the struggle, Dooley managed to get his pistol out and he shot Baker. The ward died 10 minutes after arriving at the hospital. Leland Price died December 1924. During the middle of a Saturday night football game at Preston, a fight between wards Edgar Ho and Leland Price broke out. As a punishment, the two were locked in the basement alone. The fight resumed, and at some point, Price was knocked out or slipped, fracturing his skull on the concrete floor. He fell into a coma for which he never recovered. He died the following morning. William Ruppert and Henry Herstein died December 4th, 1928. While digging a sewer ditch on the school property, 6 boys were buried alive when the trench the boys were digging in caved in. 4 of the boys were saved, but both William and Henry perished in the ground. Their bodies were recovered, and Henry's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the school. Okay, so their spirits are still there at Preston Castle. Those are the boys that the ghost hunters were listening to and found in the basement. They all were in the basement, and they said there's 14 boys, and like they were listening to what they were saying, and they all had something to say about their death. It was really sad. It was like so disturbing they had to stop the film. They were like so disturbed by the whole thing. It was just like so sad, and it's probably more than 14, but those were the 14 that they said 14 boys, but like I bet there's more. Excuse me. Okay, so if you don't know about this, this is the big one that you really need to know about, because it happened in 1950, and I think after this happened, people didn't really want to be at the school anymore because it was so public. I don't know. Anna Corbin died February 24th, 1950. The most widely talked about murder that took place at Preston is that of Anna Corbin's death. There is no way I can summarize her murder in one short paragraph. There is so much complexity to this case. The facts of the case was that she was found in the basement storeroom in a half-sitting position in the corner. Rugs had been placed in an attempt to hide the body. I also heard she was wrapped in a rug. She had been choked and bludgeoned. Her cause of death was from skull fractures due to her head hitting the concrete floor of the basement. There's a lot on this. If you want to go deeper, you can. But that was the big one. And she's definitely one of the ghosts that the ghost hunters were talking to. And she was telling them who did it. Because there was 3 trials and nobody got blamed for this death. James Whedon, December 5th, 1965. Okay, so there is 15 years later. Preston's agricultural teacher, James Jim Whedon, was brutally attacked by 2 wards on the Preston property. After assaulting Whedon, they stole his vehicle and his wallet and escaped. They were eventually caught and tried as adults. Although the Ghost Adventures show tried to claim that the agricultural teacher was murdered at Preston, history proves that he was transferred to the hospital where he succumbed to his injuries and passed away. So yeah, they said there was some guy in the basement that just like wouldn't leave one of the closets because that's where he was murdered. And but now they're saying, well, he died in the hospital, but that's like where it happened. Okay. Fred Dao Downs. this guy wasn't a staff member and he wasn't a ward. He was just like this guy on his hunting trip. And he went with his buddies, George Gorman and Ed Tibbets, when he met his fatal ending. The group of men coming from Sutter Creek but decided to hunt for doves near Mount Echo, just northeast of the reservoir. Nightfall was coming, so Fred made his last kill for the night, but the dove fell into the reservoir. Seeing that it was beyond his reach, he decided to go in after it and want to take a little swim as well. His friends claimed that he had got only chest deep in the water, wading normally, when all of a sudden he went under. There was no sign of distress, no sound, nothing. In a panic, his friends ran to the man attending the reservoir, Mr. Henderson, who arrived within seconds. Fred's friends claimed they couldn't swim, that's why they didn't go in after him immediately. However, given the amount of time between him going under and Mr. Henderson arriving, it was said it was nearly impossible for him to drown so fast. They pulled him out of the water, but he died on the banks of the reservoir before the doctors could reach him. I think now there's something in the water. They didn't know whether he drowned, collapsed in the water from heart failure, or had some sort of heat stroke. But Fred Downs died suddenly and unexpectedly on Monday, August 4th, 1902. He was well liked in the community of Sutter Creek, where he was raised. He was 34 years old, unmarried, and said he was a great favorite with all who knew him, and the sudden and untimely death would be deplored by all. So, don't go swimming. There is this smud swimming place that I wanted to go check out too, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. Something's in the water. Something's in the water out there. Speaking of water, let's figure out that water elevator. And yeah, yep, there are definitely spirits in that basement, going back to the ghost hunters. I've never seen a YouTube video where they had to stop.
Well, the only thing that I found on water elevators was in Minecraft. But I guess they don't do it in real life, or it's just a castle thing that
the wards?
Us commoners don't need to know. That doesn't need to be on the internet. But I guess somehow the water moves the elevator up
a prison
and down.
guard here? When people just want to kill you, these kids just try to kill you.
I don't know how water elevators work. So instead, I just researched about
let's talk about water elevators.
Housekeeper that died in this area, because I guess in the home, because it was really big in the press. So it's really sad and disturbing, and you probably shouldn't listen if you don't like sad and disturbing things. But I'm going to tell you the story anyway. So they had a lot of bad boys that lived in Preston Castle, and one in particular was a serial killer, and he killed a woman before. This is how he killed her. He delivered furniture to her house, and her brother was outside and her dad was away, and the dad said, "Don't ever let this guy inside our house. I just get this weird vibe." And so he delivered the furniture. "Don't ever let this guy in my house alone." And then the brother was outside and he said, "Hey, can I use the bathroom?" And the sister was inside the house putting up curtains. And he went into her room and used one of the curtains and he strangled her. And then he locked the door and he said, "Hey, do you know where your sister is?" And they said, "Oh, she's upstairs." "Oh, okay." And then he left. So then the same kid gets to Preston Castle, and they said a lot of weird things, like the boys would hit on the housekeeper, and they saw her like a mother, and her office was in the basement downstairs, and anyways, I don't really want to go into detail either, what happened, but the housekeeper was murdered, and it wasn't a curtain, but something else was tied around her neck in the same knot on the same side as it was for the previous woman. And we don't know if she was wrapped in a carpet or she was just put by the carpets in a standing up position, and she had a really bad head fracture. That's crazy is the housekeeper and the serial killer had the same blood type. So they couldn't really prove that it was her blood because there was all these scuff marks on the floor from her struggling, and he had scuff marks on his shoes, and they had the same blood type, and they saw the bloody laundry that he put away, and he swore he never did it. But then when you watch the ghost hunter videos, you can clearly hear her saying that he did do it. And he got tried 3 times and it got acquitted every time. So anyways, they let this guy go to another institution like across the country, and he just did it again. He just killed another woman and strangled her. So that's Preston Castle. They do have some really good events. It's weird. Do I love it? It's beautiful. It's the most beautiful prison I've ever seen. It's weird. It's creepy. It would be a beautiful place if it wasn't a prison. It'd be a really beautiful place as like a hotel, or like you know what I would do with this place? Keep the school, keep the castle. I would redo the inside of the castle and just make it like a really fun place for people to work together and collaborate on ideas. And I would rent out the watchtower as a great place for people to kind of get like the big picture of things. I mean, the infrastructure is amazing, and I would also help the ghosts in Preston Castle and listen. I saw it's just equipment that they have, going in there and talking to them and getting their stories and publishing their stories, kind of like what I'm doing here now, and help them move on, because it's awful what happened to them, and there's so many stories, and I'm like about to cry just talking about it. But like, souls need to move on, it's very bad that, they're there, and this could be a really wonderful place for people to learn skills and to collaborate. And what I would like to see done with this place is the ghosts get healing, and then it's used for a really, really positive area for people to grow. It doesn't just have to be for troubled people. It could be for, we're all troubled to some degree. So, yeah, it's just great. Oh, this is not Preston Castle. These are my warm-up picks. This was another really cute cottage. They have some really good real estate over here, so I am going to also do a video on the real estate in Ione. How much do you think they bought it for? Oh, they bought it for, it's 210 acres for $30 an acre, and 100 acres was donated. So they got a good deal. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of great deals around here. They do a Christmas event, a Halloween event. They do a bunch of events.